Hello, my name is Paul Felch. I'm the Director of Testing, Research, and Evaluation for Leon County Schools. This year, the FCAT will be administered during the month of April, followed by the end-of-course assessments in U.S. history, biology, algebra, and geometry. The district would like to share important procedures to assure that all students are tested in the proper standardized manner. This video should be viewed by all test administrators and proctors associated with these tests. In general, all Florida public school students, including those attending virtual schools, must be administered the FCAT appropriate for their grade level and the appropriate end-of-course assessments. There are a limited number of ESE students whose IEP indicate they should take the Florida Alternate Assessment instead, or ELL students who should take the SELA instead of FCAT reading. Here are some important facts about this year's tests. As you can see on the calendar, this year's FCAT begins on Monday, April 15th, and runs through Friday, April 26th. At the high school level, the FCAT retakes are administered between April 8th and 19th. Computer-based retakes may be administered throughout the entire window, while paper and pencil tests must be administered during the first week of April 8th through the 12th. The daily FCAT session schedule may differ from previous years. The sessions and times have been distributed to your school test coordinator and can be found on the front cover of your test administration manual. The end-of-course assessments that will be administered this year are in U.S. history, biology 1, algebra 1, and geometry. Each test has a window of 1 week. All students finishing those courses during the 2012-2013 school year should take the appropriate test. In addition, some students may need to take these retake tests as they have not yet achieved the necessary passing score. This may include students transferring in from other states, private, or homeschools. Students taking retakes and end-of-course assessments may receive additional time to complete the test. This should not be interpreted that students have unlimited time. They must be applying themselves to finishing the test. The FCAT for the following grades are computer-based only: mathematics retakes, grades 6, 7, 9, and 10 reading, and grade 5 mathematics. All end-of-course assessments are also computer-based. Exceptions are made for those ESE students with the appropriate accommodation. The policies and procedures for these tests are found in the FCAT computer-based test and end-of-course administration manuals, which your school test coordinator has distributed to the appropriate personnel. Each school must schedule computer-based tests so there are a sufficient number of computers for all students to complete the FCAT and end-of-course assessments within each window. Math reference sheets are provided at grades 5 through 8 and retakes. A periodic table of elements page is provided for grade 8 science. FCAT 2.0 rulers are provided for use only in session 2, of grades 3 and 4 math. This year, students are required to sign a testing rule acknowledgement prior to taking each test. However, refusal to sign does not excuse the student from taking the test. Test administrators are required to maintain an accurate seating chart for each testing group of students. All persons involved in administering the FCAT or handling FCAT materials must carefully read the FCAT Administration Security Agreement, which emphasizes the importance of proper training and possible consequences of test administration irregularities. In addition, test administrators must sign a Test Administrator Prohibited Activities Agreement, indicating that they understand certain prohibited activities during the test. The Test Administrator's certification number must be recorded on this form. These documents are then forwarded to your school test coordinator. All test administrators must be certified educators. Non-certified personnel may serve as proctors. The FCAT schedule varies by grade, but all Leon County schools should begin administration of the appropriate FCAT on the same day. The daily FCAT schedule should be adhered throughout each school. Test administrators must allow the exact amount of time allotted for each FCAT. That amount of time can be found in the handout your school test coordinator received from the district. A session may not be ended early even if students indicate they have finished. When a break is provided in the schedule, it is only a stand and stretch break with no interaction between students. During the break, students' answer sheets should be inserted in test booklets, which should be closed. If the students need to use the restroom during the test, only one student of each gender can be allowed at a time. Those students do not receive additional makeup time to complete the test session. Note, although the end-of-course assessments are timed, students may have additional time if they need it. All test administrators should review the test administration manuals for the appropriate subjects and grades. The days of the test are very busy. Some might even say a little hectic. That is no time to be seeing the directions for the first time. If you are a test administrator of ESE or ELL students, it is especially important that you're aware of the proper test accommodations for each student. These accommodations can be found on the student's IEP or LEP plan. All allowable accommodations must be offered to the students. No additional accommodations may be offered to the students. If a student is in a grade that has computer-based testing and needs the accommodation of a paper and pencil administration, that accommodation should be specifically noted on the student's IEP. It is also important that a student has experience with the accommodations during his or her normal classroom activities. For example, if a student has a paper and pencil accommodation for a computer-based test, this should be based on the fact that the student does not use or seldom uses a computer during normal classroom activities. Each test site should be free of distractions, have comfortable seating, sufficient workspace, and good lighting and ventilation. Students should not be facing each other when at a table. It should not be able to view each other's answers. Students should be seated at least 3 feet apart. If there's any concern, physical barriers should be placed between the students. Use of physical barriers may be of particular importance during the administration of computer-based tests. In addition, prior to the test, administrators should remove or cover all visual aids displayed in the classroom. Let's discuss test administrative activities during the FCAT. The most important thing to remember during the FCAT is to read the appropriate FCAT and EOC scripts verbatim and to provide adequate proctoring of the exam. This latter factor is most important for successful and fair test administration. This is best accomplished by circulating throughout the room during the test to ensure proper testing procedures are followed. In addition, page 31 of the administration manual states that it is not appropriate for test administrators to use phones, grade papers, or work on computers during testing. You may encourage students to continue working or review their work during the test. It is allowable to remind the class to make sure that they're in the right section of the test or on the right item on the answer sheet. However, this should not be interpreted as pointing out to specific students that he or she is answering the wrong question on the answer sheet. The test administrator cannot give advice nor give any interpretation regarding specific items on the FCAT. If a student does ask a question about the FCAT beyond general directions regarding taking the test, or about specific FCAT items, the test administrator is allowed only to give general encouragement, such as do the best you can. If a student insists that an item is incorrect, has no correct or 2 correct answers, the test administrator should inform the school test coordinator, so this may be noted on the school coordinator comment form. You may also assure the student that if there actually is an error, the item will not be counted. This brings us to an often asked question: what kind of responses are teachers allowed to give a student if he or she asks about an item? Page 16 of the 2013 FCAT Administration Manual describes test security policies and procedures. One of the prohibited activities is reading the passages or test items before, during, or after testing. Therefore, except for specific accommodations for certain ESE students, no teacher or school administrators are allowed to read any of the FCAT or EOC items. During the test, make sure the students clear their desks except for the appropriate test materials. Students should use only number 2 pencils. The students may not use any books, notes, or scratch paper, and they must not talk or make any disturbance as the student works independently. The test materials allowed by grade can be found in the administration manual. Note that for certain grades, students do have access to calculators, official calculators, reference sheets, and folders. Test booklets may not be returned to students after they have been collected. Test items are not to be discussed with the students even after the test has been finished and the materials have been returned. Any missing materials or test irregularities must be communicated with the school test coordinator as soon as possible. A test irregularity is departure from the standardized testing procedures as outlined by the FCAT or end-of-course test administration manual. For example, allotting too much time or too little time to take the test, or administering a section out of order. When we talk about test invalidation, the purpose of any test invalidation is to identify when the validity of a test has been compromised. The decision is to be made only after discussion with the district director of testing. A test must be invalidated for any of the following circumstances: a student has an electronic device during the testing, or the student is caught cheating. A test may be invalidated under the following circumstances: a student becomes ill and is unable to finish the test. The student is allowed an incorrect amount of time to take the test. A student is not given a proper accommodation. A student is disruptive during the test, or the student works on the wrong session, or an error occurs during the test that could compromise the validity of the test. Let me explain about electronic devices. The Florida Department of Education and Leon County Schools have a very strict policy concerning the possession of electronic devices during any FCAT or EOC testing session. Page 6 of the FCAT Administration Manual states, if a student is found to be in possession of any electronic devices during the testing or during a break, his or her test must be invalidated. Students and parents or guardians must be made aware of this policy prior to the test. By during the testing, we mean any time after the FCAT book has been distributed to the students. This includes any break within the test session. If an electronic device is within a student's possession during the test session, but this fact is not discovered until after the session is ended, this is still cause for test invalidation. An electronic device is defined as any that can receive, transmit, record, and/or calculate, except for the approved four-function calculator. The best way for a school to avoid students having electronic devices in their possession is to collect them prior to the test and put them in front of the classroom, and then to adequately proctor the entire test. It would be best to practice these procedures during the official FCAT practice sessions. To set a consistent example for our students, test administrators should also not use any electronic devices during the FCAT sessions. In regard to test security, an inappropriate action by a school or district personnel before, during, or after an FCAT administration may result in consequences such as test invalidation and/or loss of teaching certification. The state of Florida has contracted with a company called Cavion. This company is charged with the task of analyzing student results to identify extremely unusual behavior with the potential of unfair advantage in taking the test. There are three types of unusual behavior Cavion will be identifying. They are, first, very high similarity of responses amongst pairs or groups of test takers. Second, very unusual number of erasures, particularly from a wrong answer to a right answer. Lastly, very substantial gains or losses from one test to another. The state feels that possible causes of these extremely high similarity responses are answer copying, test coaching, proxy test taking, and/or conclusion. Therefore, when students' responses are identified as having a very high similarity of answers, that is, a 1 in a trillion chance that the matches of similar answers occurred randomly, the students' results will be withheld awaiting investigation by the district. This investigation should include all test administrators and students involved. No student-level scores will be withheld based on erasure analysis or gains analysis. However, a flag score will lead to a district review. This could mean that a school grade will be withheld awaiting that review.
Now, a word from Jillian Gregory.
Please make sure all test administrators read verbatim the correct and complete script for administering found in the FCAT EOC test administration manuals. For FCAT reading, mathematics and science, by grade and subject scripts are found between pages 33 and 238. The script for the computer-based FCAT, as well as the end-of-course assessments, can be found in separate administration manuals. The best way to avoid mistakes is a review of the manuals prior to the test dates. Perhaps the most common mistake during the FCAT has been for a student to inappropriately go from one test session to another. They do this by ignoring the stop sign visible at the bottom of the designated pages. Good proctoring will help avoid this, but if a student still does so, the school test coordinator should contact the Office of Testing, Research, and Evaluation. Calculator use. Calculators can only be used for the FCAT Math and Science at grades 7 through 12. If it is used by students at other grade levels, it is a reason for invalidation. Lastly, the security of all test materials must be maintained before, during, and after test administrations. If any secure test materials cannot be accounted for after an initial search, please inform your school test coordinator as soon as possible. This is the essential information Leon County Schools wanted to share with all FCAT and end-of-course test administrators. Other important information is shared during your school's official FCAT training. Now, back to Paul Felch.
Now I would like to speak with you personally. After 32 years, I'm retiring at the end of March and will not be the testing director for this FCAT. It has been my privilege to work with Leon County Schools since 1979, including for all the FCAT and EOC administrations. I am extremely proud of what my staff, school test coordinators, and all the school personnel have accomplished over the years. I am proud to have been part of Leon County Schools' record as well as our reputation throughout the state. I just wanted to thank you all. Well, that's it. Have a good day and good luck on the FCAT.